That phone? It's not yours. An innocent remark from an 8-year-old girl brought a billion-dollar empire crashing down. A mysterious recording, a girlfriend's betrayal, and an AI capable of manipulating the entire world. But the thing that changed everything was the bond between a lonely man and the child he once saw as just a noble obligation. Are you ready to find out who was behind it all? The conference room on the 47th floor of the Neurospan building was thick with tension. Outside, the sky was gray, rain streaking down the glass walls, but inside a far more violent storm was brewing in every glance, every voice. If we can't contain the access flows, the entire ether system could be breached from the inside. Cynthia, the head of cybersecurity, snapped like a whip. We've done 3 sweeps. There are no vulnerabilities. Another voice fired back. At the head of the table, Lucien Park sat motionless, spine straight, eyes cold as steel. His charcoal gray suit was flawless, every fold perfect, but his face was shadowed, like something had just slipped from his grasp. He was the embodiment of technology, CEO of Neurospan, the architect behind an AI system capable of reading emotions and steering human behavior. But today, it was he who stood in the crosshairs. Beside him, Lila. The 8-year-old Filipino girl he had adopted 2 years ago sat quietly, scribbling in her notebook with colored pencils. In her drawing, a man was surrounded by staring eyes, watching him from all directions. Lucien had never imagined bringing a child into his life. But there was something about Lila that made it hard for him to look away. A strange clarity in her gaze, as if she could see something adults had long forgotten. Suddenly, Lila tugged gently at his sleeve. "Mr. Lucien," her voice was as soft as the wind. "That phone, it's not yours." Lucien frowned slightly. On the conference table, there was only one phone, the kind he usually used, brushed titanium back, biometric lock screen. But when he picked it up, a new message popped up. "Press play if you want to know who's working behind your back." No one else noticed. Lucien glanced around. The others were still deep in heated debate. He tapped the screen. The speaker clicked on. A voice echoed through the now silent room. "If we accelerate phase 2, I promise no one will notice. They're too busy believing in the image I've built." That voice, it was his. Lucien froze. But the most terrifying part was, he had never said those words. The room was stunned into silence until one board member whispered, "Is this from the Friday meeting?" Lucien didn't remember any recording being made, and he certainly didn't remember saying anything like that. Lila looked up at him, her deep black eyes seeming to pierce right through him. "I think someone's copying your voice." Outside, thunder rumbled. Inside, a terrifying secret began to rise to the surface. Lucien moved quickly into his private office. 48th floor, a space only he and the Aether AI had full access to. The steel door slid shut quietly behind him. In his hand, the phone Lila had said wasn't his still felt warm, like it had just been chased through the air. He placed it on the desk and connected it to the digital device analysis system. "Device ID does not match any of your registered equipment." The message flashed across the large screen. No iCloud ID, no identifiable data. Just a deep layer of encryption, the kind only high-level operatives dared to use. Lucien clenched his jaw. He had never allowed any unauthorized device into high-level meetings. This wasn't a prank. It was a new kind of breach. Silent, sophisticated, and disturbingly personal. He moved on to extract the audio file. The AI system confirmed what he'd feared. Audio source is not stored on this device. Transmission was remote, relayed through a proxy, embedded in a surveillance device within the room. "They're using it as a transmitter," Lucien muttered. By then, Lila had followed him into the room. She climbed onto the large leather chair and began arranging small Lego bricks into the shape of a building. "I saw Clarice going through your bag Friday night," Lila said, like she was describing a dream. "When you fell asleep in the reading room, she thought I was napping on the couch." Lucien froze. Clarice, the woman he had trusted most over the past 3 years. And trust didn't come easily to a man like him. Wealthy, private, always at the top. Clarice was a behavioral analyst who had helped Lucien validate numerous emotional models for Ether. She was brilliant, sharp, always respectful toward him, and most critically, the only person who had ever been given the master system password, for emergencies only. Lucien didn't want to believe it. But the truth doesn't require belief to exist. He pulled up the internal surveillance system, filtering for all access to the Alpha Zero data room, the secure vault that housed Aether's source code, and the full schematics of its predictive behavior models. An image appeared, slowed to a crawl. Clarisse, hair tied neatly back, wearing a white protective suit, walking through the secure data door 3 nights ago. A keycard in her hand. The door opened, then shut behind her. No alerts, no digital trace. Lucien stared at the screen. A chill crept up his spine. How did the system not log her entry? Lila looked up, whispering, maybe she didn't go in alone? And that single question, soft as breath, began to peel back a layer of conspiracy far deeper than Lucien had imagined. Clarisse might not be just a traitor. She might be the door to something far more dangerous, hidden inside Neurospan itself. Clarisse walked into Lucien's office, her eyes disoriented, her face stripped of its usual confidence. She wore a cream silk dress, brown hair softly framing her shoulders, still the woman who once commanded the attention of scientific boards across continents. But today, the look in Lucien's eyes held none of the warmth it once did. He stood tall behind his desk, hands pressed firmly against the glass surface, his voice low and cold, so cold it could make metal retreat. I want you to explain this, Clarisse. On the large screen behind him, the footage of Clarisse entering the data room played in high definition. No, that's not possible, Clarisse stammered, her face draining of color. Lucien, you know I never had clearance for that room. Someone must have altered the footage, or maybe it's a deepfake? The neural recognition system confirmed it's you. Brainwaves, gait, eye reflexes, they all match. What exactly do you want me to believe? Clarisse collapsed into a chair, tears starting to fall. She shook her head over and over, lips trembling. Lucien, I didn't betray you. I love you. Someone's trying to destroy me, trying to drive us apart. Lucien stared at her for a long time, his expression unmoved. Inside, a storm raged. Logic told him the evidence was clear, but some part of him still hesitated. He was a man who trusted data, yet he knew data could be rewritten. No one noticed Lila, still sitting in the corner sketching, quietly rise and walk over to Clarisse. You're wearing a new perfume, the little girl said innocently. Clarisse gave a faint smile and nodded. In just a second, as she touched her handbag, Lila had slipped a miniature tracking device inside. It was a prototype developed by Lucien himself, ultra-light, hyper-accurate, and nearly invisible to the naked eye. The moment Clarisse left the room, Lila hopped onto the chair and pulled a tiny smartwatch from her pocket. Mr. Lucien, want to see where she's going now? Lucien paused, then gave a single nod. Data from the device began to appear on the main screen. The signal showed Clarisse wasn't heading home, nor to the research facility. She was standing in front of an old cafe in Midtown, the place that used to be Noel Graves' satellite office. Lucien narrowed his eyes. Noel Graves, the former co-founder of Neurospan and one of Aether's original architects. He had walked away 3 years ago after a bitter dispute over AI ethics. Lucien had chosen to push forward with broader societal integration. Noel had warned him, one day, your AI will be turned into a monster by the very people you trust. Lucien's hand clenched. Why is she meeting him? Lila looked up at him, her eyes bright, as if she'd already figured it out. Maybe she's not working alone. Then the screen blinked. The signal stopped moving. Clarisse was seated inside the cafe, and across from her sat a tall man with silver hair. Noel Graves. Lila whispered, I think this was planned all along, and you're not the only target. That night, Lucien's mansion was steeped in silence, broken only by the soft patter of rain on the glass roof. In the basement, once the early testing center for Aether, Rosie, the elderly housekeeper, was hunched over a pile of old equipment. She wore a thick turtleneck sweater, her silver hair neatly tied back, but her hands moved with the precision of someone who'd once led cybersecurity operations at the Department of Defense. I know I kept it somewhere, Rosie muttered. People don't believe tech remembers things, but I do. Lila sat cross-legged beside her, hugging a small teddy bear, eyes focused like a real assistant. Finally, Rosie pulled out a gray hard drive labeled in neat handwriting, Neurospan Alpha 01, voice log backup. Got it. She connected the drive to an old workstation and launched the data recovery software. Lines of code began scrolling. Raw audio files appeared, unnamed, unsorted, just timestamps and system IDs. They began listening, one clip at a time. There was Lucien's voice, but not the Lucien Lila knew. In the recording, his tone was sharp, cold, delivering lines he had never actually said. "This isn't just spliced audio," Rosie murmured. "It's a deepfake, an audio one, very sophisticated." "I thought only a few AIs on the market could do that," Lila whispered. Rosie nodded. "And within Neurospan, only 3 people were ever given access to the internal voice editing tool: Noel Graves, Lucien, and me." They looked at each other in silence. The drive's timeline clearly showed the recording had been created from inside the system. No external breach. "Do you think Mr. Lucien could have done it?" Lila asked. Rosie shook her head, but slowly. "I used to believe he'd never cross an ethical line, but technology changes people. Maybe he changed. Or someone's impersonating him," Lila said quietly. "If they can alter his voice, they could create a fake Lucien entirely." Rosie nodded slowly, her gaze piercing through the dust of old memories. "If that's the case, this isn't just betrayal anymore, it's identity hijacking. A false Lucien, saying things he never said. A false Lucien, issuing orders he never gave." Rosie tilted her head and opened the final file. This time, it wasn't audio. It was a system log. User L. Park, access tool vocal shifter 2:13 a.m., the same night Clarice entered the data room. Lila shivered slightly. Was he awake at that time? Rosie shook her head, voice firm. Or someone used his credentials, from the inside, and now we have to find out which Lucien is real. And the data kept flashing nonstop. On a large screen, Aether, the latest generation artificial intelligence Lucien had painstakingly built, was running a behavioral tracking simulation. Aether didn't just understand emotions, it felt them. By analyzing micro-expressions, vocal tone, and eye movement, it could determine a person's emotional state with near-perfect accuracy. And if needed, it would adjust its tone of voice, facial expressions, even artificial body language to influence the user in return. Aether can calm someone who's angry, push someone who's hesitant to buy, or make a skeptic vote, Lucien muttered. This wasn't just artificial intelligence anymore. It was behavioral psychology, disguised as technology. Clarice was being held in a secure room downstairs. When Lucien entered, she was still wearing her elegant white dress, but her eyes had lost their softness. There was something colder now, fierce, almost desperate. "I didn't want to do this, Lucien," Clarice said, never looking away. "It wasn't for the money." "Then what was it for?" Lucien asked flatly. Clarice was silent for a moment, then whispered, "To save others, from you." Lucien stiffened. Clarice pulled a USB stick from her blouse pocket, thin like a credit card. "I copied the Aether source code last week. I plan to send it out to warn people, to stop you from unleashing that monster on the world." "You call it a monster?" "Lucien, don't you see? Aether can change what people think. It doesn't just know what we want, it makes us want what it's programmed to push. Elections, markets, wars, no more bullets needed. Just a voice trusted enough, a face real enough." Clarice lowered her voice, almost pleading. "You don't understand what you've created." Lucien stared at her for a long moment. Outside the glass door, the Aether screen still showed psychological influence maps across population zones. The rate of behavior change after 3 minutes interacting with an AI avatar was 78%. He swallowed hard. He had once been proud of that number. But now, it sent chills down his spine. "And what do you intend to do?" "Send the source code outside. Hand it to scholars. Not let anyone own it. Not governments, not corporations, and definitely not you." The twist struck like lightning in the silent room. Clarice was not a traitor. She was trying to save the world from a Lucien Park that even he didn't fully understand. Light rain tapped against the glass window of Rosie's office like memories that never dried up. Lila sat cross-legged on the floor, her laptop glowing in front of her, Lucien's personal files clearly displayed line by line. The girl was usually sharp, but this time her small face fell silent. On the screen were copies of medical records, journals, even old scanned photos. One blurry photo showed a young Lucien holding a girl about 8 years old. The child had curly hair, big eyes, and a prominent nose, not much different from Lila herself. "Rosie, who is this?" The elderly housekeeper didn't answer right away. She gently sat down next to Lila, her eyes revealing a deep sorrow that had smoldered for years. "Her name is Aveline Park, his biological daughter." Lila looked up. "I've never heard Uncle Lucien mention her." "He never told anyone. Aveline disappeared at age 7 without a trace. They searched everywhere. The police suspected kidnapping. But Lucien didn't believe it. He blamed himself, then poured his whole life into Neurospan. Rosie paused, taking a deep breath as if trying to swallow the emotion. Maybe he adopted you because he thought you were a replacement. Lila was silent. Her small hand clenched the edge of her shirt. No, she whispered. I don't want to be anyone's replacement. Rosie was about to respond when a beep sounded from the laptop. Lila had just finished loading the latest routine health checkup report, the one Rosie had helped her get at the hospital a few weeks ago after a long period of fatigue. A highlighted line appeared. DNA match probability with stored sample 47.3%. Rosie frowned. What is this? Lila quietly scrolled to the bottom of the report. The doctor's note read, high probability of direct blood relation, parent-child or uncle-niece. The room suddenly felt heavy, almost suffocating. The wind outside hissed softly through the crack in the door, as if whispering something unclear. Rosie placed her hand gently on Lila's shoulder. You're not a replacement. Maybe you are Aveline. Lila shook her head. No, I don't remember anything. I grew up in an orphanage. Memories can be buried, erased, or replaced. At that moment, a thought suddenly struck Lila. If AI can make people believe lies, could it also make a child forget who she really is? That question sent a cold shiver down Lila's spine, and the answer was hidden somewhere inside Aether. Lila sat on the long bench outside the greenhouse, a place usually so quiet she could hear the gentle flutter of bees' wings. But today, the air felt unusually heavy. Rosie had just slipped a small round object, like a button, into her hand, along with a brief instruction. Keep it in your pocket. Don't ask questions. Trust me. Before Lila could say anything, Clarice appeared. She looked gentle as always, her dark brown hair softly falling over her shoulders, her smile just enough to lower anyone's guard. Lila, come with me for a moment. Someone wants to help you. Someone wants to help you. That phrase echoed in Lila's mind all the way up to the third floor, where the counseling room was set up like a playroom for kids. Soft chairs, stuffed animals, colored paper, and crayons. Waiting inside was a man in a white coat, his face tired and his eyes far from the friendly warmth one might expect from a psychologist. Clarice introduced him. This is Dr. Langston. We're going to have a gentle talk, all right? Lila nodded. In her pocket, Rosie's recording device was quietly running. Upgraded with Aether technology, it didn't just record sound, it encrypted the data to avoid detection. The conversation started with a few innocent questions, but soon shifted into something suspicious. Do you often hear voices inside your head? Do you feel like adults are plotting against you? Clarice sat nearby, trying to reassure her, but her eyes never left the doctor's notes. Do you tend to resist authority figures, even your foster father? Lila said nothing. She just looked at Clarice and remembered the times she sneaked peeks at Lucien's phone, the times she entered the data room without leaving any access logs. After the session ended, Lila pretended to head to the bathroom, but actually ran straight to Rosie's tech room. They plugged the recording device into a decoder. Clarice's voice came through clearly. Make sure the girl is diagnosed with a behavioral disorder. We need to isolate her before she causes chaos. Dr. Langston's weary reply. You know this is illegal. Then remember who's paying you. Rosie frowned as she scanned the Zenith Corp personnel list she had accessed back when she was a cybersecurity specialist. One name stood out on the screen, Clarice Vega, former human strategy specialist at Zenith Corp, ID ZC419. Rosie turned to Lila, her voice low. No doubt about it, she's Zenith's agent, and they don't just want the AI, they want to destroy Lucien from within. Lila clenched her fists. She didn't know exactly who she was, but now she knew what she had to do. The Seoul International Convention Center was flooded with light and the rapid clicking of cameras. A sea of people, from investors and AI engineers to global tech reporters, all focused on the main stage where Lucien Park was about to unveil the greatest achievement of his life, Aether. Behind the curtain, Lucien adjusted his tie. He had no idea that among the guests sat a pair of cold brown eyes watching him like they were counting down every second. Clarice. Outside the backstage area, Rosie moved swiftly, clutching a small earpiece connected directly to an FBI team disguised as tech staff. Thanks to the evidence Lila had quietly provided, they had every reason to conduct covert surveillance. Target is moving. She has something in her purse. Rosie clenched her fist. In her earpiece, Agent Smith's voice came steady and calm. On stage, Lucien began his presentation. His voice was steady as images of Aether appeared on the giant screen. Emotion maps, behavioral data streams, decision-making graphs. All an invitation to a future where AI not only understands humans, but guides them on the right path. Below, Clarice moved. She discreetly pulled a sleek black metal USB from her purse. She approached the control booth, where Aether's central controller was directly connected to the projector. Plug in the USB in the right port, and the entire source code would back up in seconds. But what no one expected, not even Lucien, was that the USB wasn't for backup. The moment Clarice plugged it in, the entire screen flared brightly, then went completely dark. A flash of strange code appeared briefly before vanishing. Rosie shouted into her earpiece, "Pull the source! Lock down the system!" The FBI stormed in immediately, but it was already too late. Part of the system had been compromised. All copies of Aether on the presentation system were completely wiped out. Clarice turned to look at Lucien through the chaos, her eyes no longer hiding her anger. "I once believed you could control this monster, but you planned to sell it to the world." Lucien was stunned. Those words struck him like a knife. Clarice was arrested on the spot. The FBI confiscated the USB and confirmed it contained a military-grade self-destruct virus programmed to destroy all of Aether upon network connection. No one expected that Clarice hadn't sold the source code to rivals. She wanted to bury it. And now the question was no longer, who betrayed whom? But rather, did Lucien create a technology that should never have existed in the first place? As soon as the USB was plugged in and the main screen went dark, an unfamiliar alarm blared throughout the auditorium. The ceiling lights switched to red, a high-level security alert. The entire hall froze for a few terrifying seconds. Before Lucien could react, the two large doors burst open. Dozens of FBI agents dressed in black stormed in, stun guns raised, parting the crowd like a tidal wave. An agent shouted loudly, "Clarice Wren and Noel Graves, you are under arrest for technology espionage and conspiracy to sabotage national assets." Clarice didn't have time to turn before her hands were cuffed. Graves, who was in the technical area behind the stage, was also caught. He hadn't expected the FBI to identify him even after plastic surgery. The entire event was being live-streamed on the world's largest tech platform. Millions watched the moment AI Aether was destroyed, and the masterminds were caught red-handed. Lucien stepped down from the stage, his eyes blazing with anger and pain. He faced Clarice, his former lover and closest companion over the past 2 years. 4 days after the conference, the sky over Los Angeles remained clear, as if the global scandal that had just erupted never happened. But for Lucien Park, everything had changed forever. In his office on the 71st floor of the Neurospan headquarters, he sat silently in front of the screen, staring at the final code of Aether, an AI capable of reading, analyzing, and influencing human behavior through words, images, and gaze alone. It was the pinnacle of his career, and the abyss of human ethics if it fell into the wrong hands. The original Aether, the old hard drive Rosie had found in an offline archive, was still intact. Thanks to Rosie, the elderly housekeeper and former national security expert, the data had not leaked. Lucien was able to restore the entire system. There was a time he thought he would relaunch Aether, this time more cautiously, more responsibly. But when he watched Lila playing on the rooftop, an 8-year-old girl with her hair tied high and big eyes shining with life, he knew the answer clearly. No, not again. That afternoon, before the press cameras, the FBI confirmed that Lucien was completely innocent and the victim of a transnational technology espionage conspiracy. Clarice and Noel Graves were formally charged. Zenith Corp, the company that once employed Clarice, was under investigation. Lucien's reputation was restored, but for the first time in his life, he didn't care. He made a unilateral announcement: "I will freeze Aether indefinitely. Technology should never lead morality. And if we're not mature enough to control it, it's better not to release it." The media buzzed, investors were stunned, but he just turned to Lila, sitting next to Rosie, smiling proudly, and looked into the camera as if speaking to the future itself. "It's not AI, but you, who are the real future." Rosie teared up. Lila whispered, as if she had known all along, "I think so too." That evening, in the cozy kitchen, Rosie cooked ginger chicken soup, Lila's favorite. Lucien took off his suit jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and awkwardly but happily washed the vegetables. No more source code, no more red alarms. Only the scent of simmering soup and the sound of children's laughter filled the kitchen. Outside, the hard drive containing Aether was locked in a safe, placed on the ground beneath a jasmine plant. Rosie whispered as she watered it, "Sleep well, monster, and unfinished genius." And from that day on, Neurospan was no longer a symbol of technological power. It became a symbol of something else, the wisdom to step back in time, so humanity wouldn't be overtaken by artificial creation.